Welcome back. Today we're wading into some hot territory. A major leak just spilled Glock's playbook on their new V lineup. Picture this: months of coordinated marketing and product rollout meticulously planned, and then an unauthorized seller posts the full reveal online before Glock had a chance to control the narrative. It's the kind of mess that makes PR teams lose sleep, and I've got plenty to unpack for you. What you'll learn. In this episode, I'll walk through what the V Series actually is, why it matters to everyday shooters and industry observers, and how mounting legal and regulatory pressure from places like California and Chicago likely pushed Glock toward this change. If you carry, compete, or just geek out about firearm design and industry strategy, stick around. Quick housekeeping. If you like deep dives like this, hit subscribe and drop a comment with your first impression. Are you pumped for the V models or worried about the trade-offs? All right, let's get into the timeline and what was revealed. How the leak started. Rumors started circling that Glock might thin out most of its lineup and lean heavily on the slimline 43 family. Then an unauthorized retailer leaked detailed specs and model lists online. Glock responded to Concealed Nation confirming the V Series is real, but their tone was clearly annoyed. They invest a lot into the timing of new product drops, aligning manufacturing, dealer inventories, media access, and a coordinated marketing push. And that precision just got blindsided. Company perspective. From the company's perspective, leaks undermine a carefully choreographed launch. Instead of unveiling slick promo videos, staged media loans, and hands-on early reviews, Glock had to scramble and issue a reactive confirmation, essentially admitting the cat was out of the bag and calling out those who jumped the gun. As someone who makes gear content, I get it. Launches are planned to give reviewers time to test and explain, and leaks shortcut that entire process. Name speculation. Once Glock acknowledged the leak, online chatter exploded about what the V actually stands for. Victory, version, Roman numeral 5? The uncertainty fed speculation that this wasn't just another suffix on the slide. For many, it hinted at a departure from the familiar Gen 4 and Gen 5 designations. Rollout timing. Glock eventually clarified the rollout. V models will be stocked in stores and available for media loans in December 2025, and each pistol will carry a visible V on the slide and frame. That's the quick timeline. Now let's look at the lineup and what's new. Initial lineup. The initial list includes a mix of commercial releases and distributor-only variants: G17V, G19V, G19XV, G45V, G26V, G20VOS, G23V and G23V MOS, G21 VOS, and the G44V, among others. Certain distributor exclusives were also named in the leaks. Importantly, Glock says externally these pistols will look and handle much like current Gen 5 examples, so you shouldn't expect dramatic visual overhauls. MOS and variants. Reporting from outlets covering the firearms space adds that several of the popular models will be updated with MOS, modular optic system options, and that some versions will be exclusive to distributors. The messaging from Glock stresses continuity. From an outsider's perspective, the guns will feel familiar, but there are likely to be changes beneath the surface. Pricing unknown. One of the big questions is price. Glock hasn't released MSRP details, but the conversation shifted quickly from cosmetic tweaks to why Glock would alter something that, for decades, has worked reliably and profitably for them. The short answer: legal and regulatory pressure. Conversion devices. While Glock didn't explicitly tie the V Series to efforts to curb illicit conversions, many observers see the timing as connected to lawsuits and growing scrutiny over so-called conversion devices. Those devices can allow a semi-automatic pistol to fire at a much higher cyclic rate, and a number of lawsuits and state laws have sprung up in response. Internal changes. Rather than changing the outside look, Glock's engineers are presumed to have modified internal components, things like trigger group geometry and sear interfaces, the parts that interact with those conversion devices. Company officials haven't published a detailed technical breakdown, and for obvious reasons, they're not going to explain how to defeat a modification. But enthusiasts who follow internals expect alterations designed to make attaching a conversion device far more difficult. Legal backdrop. The legal backdrop is central to this story. On March 19, 2024, Chicago filed a noteworthy lawsuit claiming Glock's design made its pistols too easy to convert to fully automatic weapons. The suit alleged police found a significant number of modified Glocks linked to crimes and argued that Glock could redesign critical parts to reduce or eliminate that vulnerability. Recovery stats. City officials highlighted hundreds, and later reports suggested nearly 1,200 pistols outfitted with conversion devices were recovered in a recent multi-year span. The argument from municipal prosecutors and some advocates is that manufacturers should take reasonable steps to reduce the risk of their products being turned into more lethal weapons. How conversions work. Investigative outlets expanded on the issue, explaining that small, inexpensive devices, sometimes 3D printed or cheaply manufactured, can be attached to the back of a pistol slide and interfere with the trigger mechanism. That prompted alarm among public safety officials because the result can be a weapon that empties a magazine far more quickly than intended. California law. Politically, the pressure mounted on multiple fronts. California passed Assembly Bill 1127, signed into law on October 10, 2025, which bans the retail sale of semi-automatic handguns that are easily convertible to fully automatic fire, a law that goes into effect July 1, 2026. While the bill doesn't name a manufacturer, its language and timing strongly suggest it was drafted with the vulnerabilities critics point to in mind. Business dilemma. The law and similar legal actions put companies in a bind. Redesign or lose access to major markets. Glock's answer, according to the leak and the company's statements, appears to be to redesign internal elements so the pistols can no longer accept conversion devices while preserving the outward appearance and user experience as much as possible. Market logic. From a business standpoint, that's understandable. California is a huge market. Choosing not to sell there would be a major commercial hit. Redesigning to meet new rules preserves market access and helps blunt litigation claims that the company knowingly allowed an unsafe design to persist. Community split. Unsurprisingly, the community reaction split. Some shooters welcome the move as pragmatic and responsible. If Glock can keep their pistols reliable and still make them more resistant to illegal conversion, that's a net positive for lawful owners. Others worried about aftermarket compatibility. Will existing triggers, rails, and parts still fit? Will holsters and accessories still work? For competitive and professional users, those unknowns matter. MOS frustration. Part of the skepticism stemmed from pacing and features. Early leaks suggested MOS might be limited in the first wave, which irked optics fans who prefer the factory-ready cuts. Later info clarified that MOS variants are planned for some models, but the staggered availability still left some buyers frustrated. Gen questions. Another question people raised was whether V is effectively a rebranded Gen 6. Some thought the V could be using the Roman numeral V to indicate the fifth generation or a new branch in the lineage. Glock has not asserted that Gen 5 is dead. Whether the V runs alongside Gen 5 or replaces it over time remains unclear, fueling forum speculation. Aftermarket concerns. For those who rely on aftermarket upgrades, this uncertainty is the hardest part. Will trigger groups, connectors, sight plates, and other internal components remain compatible? Will gunsmiths be able to service older models the same way? These are practical considerations that affect everyday owners, not just armchair pundits. Personal take. Personally, I'm cautiously optimistic. Glock's reputation is built on simplicity and dependability. If they can keep those strengths while making the pistols less susceptible to illicit modifications, that's a pragmatic compromise. Yes, some third-party compatibility may be lost, but the trade-off is continued lawful access to their products in major jurisdictions. Wish list. With the redesign likely focused internally, it's also tempting to imagine what else Glock might have done while they were at it. If you're redesigning the mechanics anyway, why not address some long-standing user requests? A better out-of-the-box trigger with a crisper break and more predictable reset, upgraded factory sights, metal or tritium options instead of basic polymer ones, slightly refined ergonomics or improved texturing on the grip, and more consistent MOS availability across the initial models are common ask. Industry trend. The V Series also reflects a larger industry trend. Competitors like Sig Sauer, Walther, CZ, and several boutique makers have been pushing optics-ready slides, improved triggers, and varied ergonomics for years. At the same time, regulators aren't shy about stepping in when designs are perceived as enabling criminal modification. The result is a fast-changing market dynamic. Innovate, comply, or face restricted access. Ethical angle. There's also an ethical angle to consider. Responsible gun owners and many manufacturers don't want devices that make weapons easier to convert into machine guns circulating in the market. Adjustments that reduce that risk can be seen as aligning product design with public safety concerns, without surrendering lawful self-defense options. Regulatory worry. Critics on the other side worry that regulatory pressure could be used to chip away at lawful ownership rights. That's where manufacturers find themselves trying to thread a narrow needle. Keep products functional and appealing for lawful users while removing easy paths to criminal misuse. Manufacturing impact. From an operational viewpoint, the V Series gives Glock a chance to simplify its manufacturing. The company reportedly listed dozens of models for discontinuation as it streamlines production. Fewer SKUs can mean lower costs and more focused R&D spend, but it also means some niche models and aftermarket ecosystems may shrink. Aftermarket future. What this will mean for the aftermarket is still an open question. If internal geometries change significantly, some third-party parts may no longer fit without adjustment. Holster makers, sight companies, and trigger manufacturers will all be watching closely to see how much backward compatibility remains. Bottom line. So what's the takeaway? The V Series looks to be less about flashy exterior redesigns and more about a strategic pivot. Adapt internals to address legal and regulatory threats while keeping the pistols look and feel familiar for users. In other words, Glock is trying to preserve market access and its reputation for reliability by making targeted engineering changes. Shipping schedule. The first V models should start shipping in December 2025, according to the company's outline. Whether you view this as necessary, disappointing, or somewhere in between, likely depends on how much you value aftermarket freedom versus continued access to Glock pistols in regulated markets. Final question. I want to know where you stand. Will you pick up a V Series Glock when they're available, or are you planning to stick with the Gen 5s you already own? Are you more worried about compatibility and features, or relieved that Glock is taking steps to blunt legal challenges and preserve sales in major states? What's next? If you enjoy these kinds of breakdowns, give this video a thumbs up and subscribe. I'll follow up with hands-on impressions as soon as I can spend time with a G19V or similar. I'll test trigger feel, sighting, and any differences in fit and finish that matter to owners and competitors. Until then, train hard, stay safe, and keep the conversation civil. This isn't just about gear, it's about how an iconic company responds to legal pressure and public safety concerns while trying to serve its customers. That's a story you'll want to watch unfold. Thanks for watching. Drop your thoughts below, and I'll see you in the next deep dive.